G'day coppers, welcome back to the bush. In this episode of Lockyup's Full Driving, we're installing and testing the PowerCore air filter from Donaldson in a LandCruiser 200 series. First up, let's check what you get in the box. So here's what comes in the box. So we have the air cleaner and the element itself. We have instructions, won't be needing those, a couple of brackets and a box of bits and pieces. Okay, now before we do the installation, let's go out and baseline with the manometer, the standard air filter element and filter box. Off we go, 0 to 100. And there we go, 10.99 seconds. There was our maximum, 43.27. Okay, on with the installation. Now we're going to make a start by pulling out the standard air filter assembly. Firstly, we get to the MAF wiring loom and just open that one up, and then we can loosen off this clamp here so we can take the intake pipe off. Next up, we've got 4 clips around the edge. And now we've disconnected the 4 clips, let's lift up the lid. And we should be able to remove this out. Pull the standard air filter element out. And there we go. The only thing we need to do now is pull off the MAF sensor. And then we just pull out the MAF sensor, and now we can remove the lid. Okay, and now it comes to the bottom part, we've got to unscrew that. So we remove the 3 bolts, one at the right front of the battery, one at the left front near where the air comes in, and one down the back here. Don't forget to loosen off the worm drive clamp for the air entry, and that's it, we can pull out the bottom. Okay, so now let's head over to the bench and prepare the Donaldson for installation. Now to prepare the filter housing, the first thing you need to do is grab the weighting plug and insert it into the drain hole. With that done, we can start installing the bracketry. Now we're putting on the bottom bracket, and luckily this can't be put on the wrong way around. It can only fit the right way. Okay, now we'll flip it over and install the top bracket. Now with the filter housing right side up, last bracket to install, and this one goes riding down. With that done, let's grab the MAF sensor from the old air box and install it on this new air box. Now just remove the 2 screws on the MAF sensor, pull it out of the standard housing, and we'll give it a decent clean up. So here's our can of MAF sensor cleaner. We'll grab our MAF, give it a good spray down, and don't forget to let it dry off and evaporate a bit before you reinstall it, which we'll do now. We'll grab the MAF sensor, install it into the new housing with the plug facing upwards of course, and use the Allen keys that come in the kit. And just tension it down just a touch. And that's it, time to put the new airbox in the car. And that's the last of the 3 bolts. Now all we have to do is tighten up the inlet pipe on the clean side. And there's an inlet pipe for the snorkel. Then we have to connect the MAF sensor, but before we do that, we're going to connect the manometer up to the MAF sensor port and go and do some performance testing. Now guys, if you're liking this content so far, consider subscribing to the channel and ring that bell icon so you don't miss out on our future content. Now if you want early ad-free access to videos just like this one, consider becoming a patron on Patreon. There's a link down in the doobly-doo. Anyway, back to the episode. Okay, now with the Donaldson, we're going to test the vacuum and the acceleration performance. And off we go. There we go, 10.36 seconds, so that's a substantial increase. Let's check the maximum, 26.99. So we had a substantial decrease in the amount of restriction in that element So that's great, and we've actually increased performance. Okay, let's compare the two. And let's start with the 0 to 100 times. Firstly, a little bit about the 200 that we installed the Donaldson air filter on. It's a 2013 Sahara full touring spec. So it's got a steel bull bar, it's got a winch, it's got a rear bar, it's got a long range tank, it's got drawers, it's got the whole 9 yards. But it still managed to do the 0 to 100 in 10.98 seconds, which is completely respectable. But what about with the Donaldson? Well, it managed to reduce that time down to 10.36 seconds. And that's a 6% decrease. Nothing to sneeze at. It's pretty decent. But what about the more important restriction? So let's have a look at the intake restriction in inches of water. Firstly, standard. Well, it was actually quite high. One of the highest I've ever measured. 43.27 inches of water. And that's with the standard Toyota paper filter element. What about the Donaldson? The Donaldson came in at 26.99 inches of water. So that's a substantial restriction reduction. In fact, 38% reduction in restriction. Fantastic. So not only do you get the much superior filtration ability of the Donaldson system, you get a near 40% reduction in restriction from that standard airbox and paper filter element. Absolutely fantastic. This thing, ladies and gentlemen, I'm happy to say, is worth the price of admission. Well, the results are very telling. Now we can put on the restriction indicator. And of course we just screw them on clockwise. And don't forget to leave the indicator facing up so you can see when it actually turns red. And that's it, guys. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Now, if you've liked it, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. And if you didn't, by all means, give it a thumbs down. Not once, not thrice, but twice. Thanks, guys. We'll see you in the next one.